Oh, we're live. Hello.
You are.
Hello, Daryl Vine. How are you?
Hello, Scott Carson. I am sensational.
Oh,
Sensational.
you are sensational, aren't you?
Mm.
Yeah.
And some.
Opportunities everywhere.
I'm trying to get some chocolate for dinner.
Get it in.
My grandson taught me that. He said, hey, granddads are allowed to give chocolate to grandkids anytime they want.
Really?
Hmm.
Well,
I said, absolutely.
My mother replied that, and that's how she won Oscar over pretty quickly. It wasn't hard. Yeah.
Hmm.
So, hey, here we are again on Tuesday night. Now, last week we didn't turn up for a very, very good reason, and I'm looking forward to diving into that a little bit.
Yeah.
But doing good, right? What's doing good and doing good with good people and doing good in amongst our communities, and then creating, I'd hate to say it, a gooder community because we're getting together and working together, and I just love it. So I just got a little bit of a thing for last week, if that's all right, Daryl, because we weren't here, and I got to turn around and go poke, and I poked him, and he's
in the
real.
flesh. That's
he's
right.
not just this thing on the screen. So that was entertaining.
It was awesome.
But it was good. So let's just jump into that quickly. Let's share a little bit of that.
Go ahead.
How was it for you?
Well, look, it was epic. Like, really, it's, we sit here, and we've been sitting here now for 5 weeks talking about the value of good and those people that do good. And then you get blessed by you actually go into the community and you have the opportunity to help them with much needed fundraising. And then you hear their story and why they're doing it, and that they've been doing it for 30 years or 2 years or just started. Do you know what I mean? Like, we had one young guy there who's just started his own community theatre, all volunteers. Like, man, and in our presentation, Scotty, as you know, that we talk about history, 1868, 5 guys get together and decided, let's start a cricket club, just cause. And that club grows and that club grows, and they think, well, we better build somewhere for them to sit. And then that grows and then that grows, and now it's the MCG. So I go, dude, and that story, so I resonated with this young guy. I go, it's a local community theatre, but you with your volunteers, and it will grow, and then you'll need more seats, and then it'll grow, and who knows, you might build the next Palladium. All from volunteering, you know what I mean? It's like, it's crazy.
Well, it was interesting. So I actually had a pretty reasonable conversation with him, and talked about his why and why he came to Australia, and what were the opportunities for him. And he wanted to do something different, so he had to be in a different environment in order to do that. But it's fantastic how people turn adversity into gold and into doing good. There's another chap there by the name of Lance Paccioni, who runs the Love Me, Love You Foundation. Great fan of Lance. I've known him for a few years now, and what he puts on the table is wonderful. And I'm really excited to hear what he's up to next. What happens next for him? Because it's there's a slight alteration in what he's doing, and it's just extraordinary. But all the way through to the young guy from Sudan, South Sudan. Now, I didn't know Sudan was 2 countries. It's North and South Sudan now, right?
Well, one's Sue and the other one's Dan.
Yeah. Oh, actually, I got a joke, right? And before I'm actually going to have to bring our guest in tonight before I say this joke. Is that all right?
Sure. Yeah, go ahead.
All right, because
still your show, Scotty.
Well, I'm going to control the button, but I don't know how long for.
Yeah, I know,
right? But like, all right. So I'm going to bring in Lisa, because this joke's a little bit inappropriate, but I'm going to share it anyway. We got Lisa Westgate joining us tonight to have a conversation on doing good, because Lisa's a great supporter of what we're doing, and she does good with her stuff. So I'd like to bring her in. So, g'day, Lisa. How are you?
Hey. Hi. How are we?
Good.
Not bad for a young
fella. You brought me in because I'm trained in laughing at your jokes. Is that why?
No, I'm because of the political correctness that I might need to be corrected on, basically. So
I'll move back a bit for this one.
Yeah, no, it's all right. All good. Yeah, just be ready, right? Now,
Yeah.
my son came home the other day. He goes, Dad, back in your day, you had Wonder Woman. I said, yeah, we did. He goes, well, in my days, we have I wonder if it is a woman. I'm like, fair call. I'm like, I thought that was quite funny for a kid to try and work that out. First to call me old. Now, is that politically incorrect, Lisa?
Wow. Glad you went there first.
Which way?
Okay, there's a few questions. One, I think it's interesting how humour develops as society shifts, and so as new issues come up, there are new jokes about these things, right? So like how humour is one of the ways that we as people attempt to rationalise things and make sense of the world, right? So I think that's interesting. Two, I don't know if it's objectively a funny joke, and to be honest, I think Oscar delivers it way better.
Guarantee it delivers it better than I do.
Is it politically incorrect? In no one's opinion but my own, I would say I don't think it's a politically incorrect joke. It doesn't use a derogatory term. It's not, blatantly offensive. I think one of the things we do need to be mindful of as a culture is as we use humor to negotiate, new paradigms, new conversations, it's probably good to have an awareness that there can be a sensitivity around some of those new topics. So you probably need to pick your audience. But yeah, in my personal feeling is no, it's not politically incorrect. It's probably not the it's just not a great joke.
Well, I got one to throw out here before you comment, Scotty, because it's like I believe that I am an inherently funny guy. Now, everything I say might not be funny to everybody, but I've been told that I'm quick-witted and all that sort of stuff. So it's really hard when your natural culture is to make a wisecrack at anything, to think about what you've just expressed. Like, so I'll give you an example. So I was fortunate enough to have a game of golf Sunday with my mate, and I haven't played for weeks. We get up there, and I don't know if you know much about golf, but generally on a golf course you have what they call the black markers, which is the members, and then way up here you have the green fee or social players, and then way up here you have the ladies' tee, which right. And on a par 5 it could be 100-meter advantage. So blokes have for decades whinged about this inequality. So anyway, so we step up on the tee, and I say to my mate, because of we were talking about the disparity between the distance, and I said to him, just because I do, I said, listen, I would like you to understand that for the rest of the round, I would like you to use my new pronouns, she and her, which then would qualify me to use the ladies' tee.
Move up.
Yeah.
Yeah. See? That's it. Already funnier. Yeah.
The funny bit was that old Paulie, who played with us, who's 76 and a bit deaf, actually thought I was being serious and went, that'll do me. I'll play off the ladies. So he just walked straight up to the ladies. He put his ball down. Off he goes. We're all standing to go. Mate, he was joking. Like it was a joke.
We're not really.
Not really. He's taken I'll respect the pronouns. 76. Okay, good. That'll do. But it is really difficult, Lisa, to actually modify your natural thought process, irrespective of. I still get in trouble with the kids about being racist, and I'm going, we're just telling jokes that we always told. Yes, okay, now it's offensive.
Yeah, it's a fascinating topic. So I'm out. I don't know if I self-proclaimed as funny, but I consider myself to be a student of comedy.
That was funny. Just then, Steve.
I do watch
Unicorn,
a lot
mate.
of comedy and a range of comedy, and I'm a big fan of it as a social lubricant and as a communication style. I think it's part of humanity that's unique to I don't speak cat or dog, so I don't know if they tell each other jokes, but I think as humans, it's a really fascinating way for us to communicate with each other and test the waters and potentially push boundaries. And you can sort of get away with saying things if you're having a bit of a wink, wink, nudge, nudge, that you couldn't say dead straight, you know. And comedy's gone back. Like if you look at sort of, you know, the Python era of comedy, and you know, there's certainly things that have occurred. I mean, can you imagine, in terms of like, is it politically incorrect, Scotty? Can you imagine our kids' generation watching Benny Hill or Are You Being Served, right? Like, that shit was funny 25 years ago, 35, 40 years ago, but it's not okay. Like, it's not okay. You know, there's a lot of what they call now upskirting and, you know, blowing, you know, like just what was socially acceptable has shifted over that period of time. And so I think comedy is a really fascinating gauge of where a society is and what's okay in one society and generation is not okay in another. We make jokes in Australia that are super not okay in America, you know, and vice versa. You know, like you watch Jim Jeffries, for example, who's an Australian comedian who's lived in America for a long time. He will make jokes about gun control and whatnot because he's a foreigner, right? He's an Australian. He has a different perspective. But he makes jokes over there that people are like, oh, the guns, you can't kind of, you know, joke about our, you know, Fifth Amendment right or whatever it is. So yeah, comedy in general, I think, is a fascinating temperature check of where things are. As a purist, as a comedy purist, I like to think that there is nothing that can't be joked about. One, if it's a good joke, right? It's a solidly put together joke. And two, it's funny. One of the people I really enjoy watching deconstruct comedy is actually Jerry Seinfeld. He does it on comedians in cars drinking coffee.
Yeah, great show.
And there's also a lot of videos on YouTube of him sitting with other comedians like Chris Rock and Ricky Gervais, deconstructing comedy and talking about, you know, where are those points at which it's okay, not okay, and frequently it comes down to, is it funny? If it's funny, you can say it, but funny is so subjective, right? And there's obviously a lot of drama around people like Dave Chappelle, who's one of my favorite comedians because he pushes right up to the edge, and then potentially steps over. But he sees that as almost a responsibility of his to stretch the conversation through comedy so that people can then have that conversation in a more serious context, because he went there first in a comedic framework, which, yeah, so I find the whole it's funny that you started out with a joke and we've gone this way, because it's one of the things I really like to study and get my head around is where that fits, and, you know, within a society at large.
I'll tell you something that I totally agree, and I couldn't have said it better than what you just said, Lisa. Scotty, it's the right thing to say to new guests, right? Anyway, it's interesting because I believe part of our lack of ability to have the conversation, it comes from when we were kids growing up, the joke off was the ultimate. You know, I remember at a restaurant one night, someone had said something that wasn't a joke, but it was funny, which reminded me of a joke. So I said, I've got this joke, right? So I'd tell this joke. Guy sitting across the other side of the table didn't know him from Adam, and he was there with his wife, was a friend of mine, and he goes, funny that. and he tells me a joke, which then reminded me of a joke. And this whole night was this banter. The table was like they had sore cheeks, sore ribs, sore everything. It was hilarious. But that whole bonding communication exercise that you talk about then, and the thing that concerns me a little. So I've got a 21-year-old daughter, and so we were all sitting out at the back having coffee and all that sort of. It was just last night, and I said to them, and they're all actors, right? So they're studying acting, and you think if an actor is going to be an actor, you got to be able to tell a joke. And I go, listen, someone's going to tell me a joke. I haven't heard a good one for I don't know how long, and they go, oh, we don't really know any, and we don't really tell jokes anymore. Like we just recant funny stories. I went,
Well,
the whole craft of engaging with everybody to get to the punchline. My favorite comedian at the moment is Michael Jr. I don't know if you've seen him. To be politically correct, he's a black guy. He's a Christian comedian, so he there's no language in his routine, but he pushes every boundary of every spectrum, and he's just, you know, that real genuine, intelligent, like you said, like Dave Chappelle and like Ricky and Jerry. They're really clever people when they come to construct that. But you can tell they've learnt the communication by being able to tell a story with a punchline. You know,
it's like it's also interesting. Like I'd love your take on it, Daryl. And feel free to talk amongst yourself, Scott.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure, to go make a cup of tea, Scotty.
Yeah, that's exactly.
I'll be back in 5.
we better not say too much, Lisa. He still has the button.
I know he has the button. Now he knows where it is. Yeah, I'd be interested in your take in the relationship between sort of some of the people we've mentioned and the way their life experiences that have led to their utilizing comedy as an icebreaker, as a way to manage maybe bullying or difficult times at school, or difficult home life situations. Like lots of people have come from challenge and trauma into comedy. And I think it's an interesting point of view that you brought up about there's a shift occurring with, so my kids, I've got a 23-year-old daughter and 23-year-old son, so I overhear similar conversations, I think. And it's I was away on a trip last week, and I listened to a young under 25-year-old couple, on a date, a lunch date they were having, and rather than telling her a joke, he recounted a funny TikTok that he had seen on social media, and I had seen it, and he totally messed it up. And it wasn't very funny. And then she was like, oh yeah, like, is that it? And, you know, I think something for me is lacking in, I saw something funny, I'm gonna tell you about it, as opposed to learning where your own boundaries are, finding your own funny.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think the biggest thing of where you find the fabric of where most comedians come from is the actual real quality you need, not material. You know, like they say that the Apollo in America, like the hardest core stand-up routine. Like, Scotty, I don't know if you've seen the Apollo on comedy night. So they have open mic where anyone that wants to be a comedian, and the Apollo is the biggest playhouse in the world for comedians. But they do have a shepherd's crook. You know,
they'll pull you
and they get you around the neck and pull you. If you're tanking, they'll just yank you off the stage. Like, it's hardcore.
They're not mucking around.
Yeah, and it's that fundamental that because of the adversity gets them through the booze.
Yeah, you gotta have a little.
They go, it doesn't matter what this
skin, right?
audience says to me. I've had worse. And then the fact that, you know, but again, you get back to what's politically correct, Scotty. I remember like absolutely ripping a rib when Steady Eddie hit the stage the first time. If you know Steady Eddie. So, yeah, you know what I mean? Severely disabled and just took the absolute mickey out of himself for the whole routine, which now you would go, would there be groups that would lobby against even a person with a disability taking it out of people with disabilities? Do you know what I mean? So I think there's a lot of the long-term comedians like the guys we talked about and like Seinfeld and all that have endured that and matured as well, that they can, like you said, they can dance across the lily pads of insulting everybody without actually insulting anybody.
Chris Thornton, full of surprises. Yeah, it's interesting, and it sort of leads into a sort of a deeper conversation around this hypersensitive era that we seem to find ourselves in, that everyone is so, or the culture seems to be so risk averse and so offense averse. I don't want to offend, because there is it's like the pendulum swings, right? So we're at a phase now where I see people there's a confusion between what I clinically would refer to as triggered to being offended, right? And we used to be able to be offended, right? That offends me. I'm offended by that. And I'll have a conversation with you why, right? Here's why I disagree with that. And there was dialogue about it. Whereas the common vernacular at the moment, or particularly on social media, the response is, "Oh, I'm triggered, and therefore you've done something wrong."
Yeah,
because I'm triggered, but there's not the allowance for the dialogue around it. We used to sit around and talk about our differences, whereas now either I don't want to read anything that might upset me. I mean, I've met people in the last few years that have said, I don't watch the news. I find it very negative. I cannot imagine my parents generate like just opting out of reality. Oh, I don't look at what's going on in the world around me. Like the way I was brought up, that was never an option to choose exclusively choose your sources of information, right? Like I grew up in a household, we watched the ABC News and you read The Age. I was aware that there was a few other newspapers, there's other TV news channels, and you sort of got a smattering of all of them, right? And that was the news of the day. And now we, due to technology and streaming and whatnot, like you can exclusively watch, say, Sky News or Fox News or something like that from the US, or, you can selectively receive your information from one point of view exclusively, and then refuse to engage in all others. And for me, that's a bit of I struggle with that. That challenges me, because I'm like, well, how do we then move past offense, or how do we? I'm a big advocate, and Scott knows this. I am very passionate about unsiloing our society, right? I'm anti-box, putting people in boxes, right? Whether it's socioeconomic boxes or gender boxes or whatever. I'm like, we all bleed red, people be people, I don't care, right? And so that's kind of my point of view on things. So I'm very challenged by these new methodologies of segregation, is kind of the way I see it. Including the hypersensitive.
Yeah, I'm going to chime in finally because I'm sitting back listening to a fair bit of this, and I think it's something that
Sorry, I'm breathing through my ears.
is really important, right? Because at the moment we live in a society where that is the reality, right? Wonder Woman to wonder if is a woman. That's
Yeah.
the reality of our kids. How do they have those discussions? Like I've got on my notes tonight to talk about Bakes, who did a great job for the Business of Smiles and presenting himself, right? Doing good, taking the lessons he's learnt in life through adversity and some real opportunity and stepping up and doing good, gifting people the opportunity to grow. But even when I was posting on the notice board, there was a comment because I was talking about grit because he's presenting grit, and I've got a clip of him getting in footy, we're getting belted around but getting back up again, belted around, getting back up again, and it actually brought up a lot for some people. Like I actually don't want my kids playing football because of their head injuries and because of these sorts of things. And I said, that's fantastic. And they're like, what? I said, well, let's engage in this conversation. Let's bring this conversation to the night. Let's open it up, the discussion, so that we can sit here and learn more. What is it we need to learn at that point? Because that, for me, in any conversation, no matter what it is, if there's something that's offensive or triggered, what do I need to learn about this? When it comes to people, I personally believe that we're all human, right? We're all human. First and foremost, the fundamentals of our presence is we're human, right? If we find the commonality and then we peel it back and go, okay, well, you might be gay, you might be transgender, whatever you are, that's fine. But let's chunk it up and go to human. It's like, for me, I like to use the analogy of red wine, right? Red wine, people like red wine. It's fantastic. But if it was all just red wine, you wouldn't know which wine to have with which meal because it tastes better as you have it. So we've got to get specific on the identification of things, but the only way to do that's to understand it. We've got to try it with a couple of different things, see which one works. Yeah. But we've got to investigate. That's the key to it. Investigate things to make them go to move forward.
I think it's changing that ideology again. I remember back in the old days, like I'm talking my great grandparents' days, and that society started with the commonality, and as you knew each other better, you found out the differences. We now start with the differences and don't get a chance to find out what common we have. Do you know what I mean? It's all, what are the differences? And when you were saying before about the offensive thing, the other thing that I find really interesting about this generation is it's an inclusive offense. I'm offended by that because I'm part of this group. Not that it actually personally offends me, but I have a bigger issue that I'm in a collective of what? I'm a collective of soccer players. So we all find it abusive in the Black Lives Matter versus All Lives Matter versus this conversation. Do you know what I mean? So we find, instead of saying, okay,
it's vicarious offense.
Yeah, it's like we are.
I'm offended on their behalf.
Exactly. It's but we're also in a position now where they get to hide behind the veil of no personal connectivity with most of this group because everything is now online. It's all media related. Like you said about TikTok, there is a TikTok challenge, which is realistic. I don't understand. The ice bucket challenge that went around TikTok was crazy, right? Which is life-threatening for some people. But it's funny on TikTok, so let's just keep advocating. Now we get to be this group or this other political agenda group, or what I mean. So that they take solace in the collective, but are so separated from that compared to when we took solace in our community back in those days. It was the whole community, boots and all, not vicarious or. Yeah, but if someone in the community got offended, well, get over it, mate. Like, that's you. We're not. The whole really town's not going to get.
I wonder what the influence of world wars is on this conversation, right? Because there is a certain generation that goes, what these kids need nowadays is a good war. right?
Yeah.
But I think in terms of unifying a group,
Mhm.
the fact that previous generations, so my parents' generation are immediately post World War II, in that sort of high conflict scenario, when and this is old school war, right?
Mhm.
I'm talking like country on country war, not terrorist groups and whatever. Like a old
Like a
school,
dinky die,
it's
good old
us
war.
versus them, right? No, well, like to use, and it's not the war that my family were involved in, but let's say Australia and Japan, right? Japan's bombing Darwin. Australians together, collectively, are clearly on the Australian side of that.
Mhm.
If you're going to have to pick a side, you're on the Aussie side. And I think in those sort of extreme circumstances, I think that did contribute to that collective oneness on a larger scale, because there was a larger scale collective enemy, right?
Mhm.
And that's why there's these movies like Independence Day and Mars Attacks, this idea that Hollywood has played with for a long time, that The Day the Earth Stood Still, that's a classic. Google it, kids, watch it, it's really good. But this idea that it will take an intergalactic enemy for humanity to actually get cohesive and realize that we are all the bloody same is only going to come from an interplanetary enemy, right? And it's been played out in movies over and over again. But I think that idea comes, like, we've birthed that because we see such separation within a community, where that we create reasons to be separate.
Mm.
So just be curious as to whether you think, though, those war experiences led to a level of cohesion that we haven't had for some time. Now, I don't want to be dismissive at all of, there's clearly been conflicts since the Second World War, and there'll be migrant communities that are like, I just left the war. It's absolutely still happening, but particularly for a certain demographic, like an Anglo-based demographic in a Western country, it's been a long time since a big war.
Mm. Yeah, it's interesting. Like, it always comes to mind because I'm not a war advocate at all. Hate it. Can't.
Well, yeah,
but it's one of those things that is part of my mandate, which is the why, and then what happens next. So why are we at war, and then what happens next? Like, what's the outcome? But I think there is part of this process where, and look, and I'm not a real conspiracy theorist, although I don't mind a good one. Like I was having lunch with Elvis the other day, but don't tell anyone. That sort of one. But but there's a lot of our new generation that has had some serious manipulation relative to, and again, I don't know why. Why are we trying to, as the powers to be or whatever, separate the community?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Or like,
Yeah.
what's the governance of that? Why are we trying to get people away from personal contact? In other words, away from the army, because the next rebellion was going to come. Interesting segue. Sorry. There's a movie called Wall Street, which you're probably seen, and then there's Wall Street 2. So Wall Street 2 is Gordon Gekko gets out of jail for what he did in Wall Street 1. Whilst he's in jail, writes a book, and he said the next war that humanity will see is cannibalism. He said, because once we start to run out of the supplies that we need because we're overpopulated, once the monetary system stops because production and economy stops, the only thing left to eat will be us. And then there's the whole zombie mania for all the other movie buffs out there. You know what I mean? That sort of society. So you go, what?
It's a
Why?
Silent Green reference in here somewhere.
Yeah. But you know, it's those things like, and you talk about going to war, and Australians collectively, for all of us that have travelled, are referred to globally as pretty laid back. You know, it's like, if we're in America, for example, and there's an international conflict, America is ready for war when the Russians step foot on a boat that's still in the dock in Russia. Australia, it's like, we wait until they're in your backyard. Mate, don't interrupt us. We're having a barbie. Listen, quite welcome to have a sanger,
Listen,
you know, mate. But like,
when you reckon you'll be here,
it's not fight time yet. You know what I mean? It's like, come back on Tuesday. We'll be ready then. Do you know what I mean? So we have this culture. It's like the reason that they'll never get rid of the gun laws in America is because they want them to have the mentality of defense. So when the country says we now need 1 million troops, they're all ready to go because they've been defending themselves, their home. So it's part of the cultural mindset. So my real concern is, what are our kids being manipulated into these different minority? You know, like, we never grew up in a the squeaky wheel gets the oil. Do you know what I mean? We grew up in a democratic society. Majority wins. Not now.
Yeah, I guess
majority doesn't win anything now, right? It's who's jumping up and down.
Yeah,
and that teaches our kids that culture. It's one of the reasons, and not to do the spin that I normally do, Scotty, but here it comes. You ready for it? One of the reasons that we are so passionate about elevating volunteers is because those people that are caring, those people that have, like the comedians, they've been through the time and it's been tough. And for the ones that Bakes talked about, they're the ones that have the grit that then go, I'm going to volunteer for 40 years. Like, I'm going to do good for other people for 40 years, which is why we just, you know, all of these things. That's the culture that we want to instill on the kids to get them away from this, whether it's government, political, money, manipulation, because they have created this environment where they think that is the whole world. And then I will be disappointed as a grandfather when I've passed on to know that my grandson didn't get the human experience. That will be a disappointment for me. You know what I mean?
I think it's a great reflection in that, you know, to sit here and potentially commiserate about, you know, modern times and kids these days. It also does hold an incredible opportunity, like that the last comment that Scott put up said. You know, it's important for those that are doing good to get out there and do good, you know, out loud and shape the world in the vision that we have and the way we want to see it, and how we want to instill the values that we think are important into our kids and their peers and grandkids and future generations. Because it's not, you know, what is it? The only guarantees of death and taxes. The only thing that is guaranteed is change, right? So this may be a bit of a stock take assessment of where we are now and how things used to be. Guaranteed, it'll change again. So now is the time that we can influence which direction that next change comes. And if we can do that by doing good and talking about, you know, supporting each other and that humans are humans, and if that's the influence that we can have now that will pay off down the line, then this is the opportunities to now, you know, do the work and sow the seeds, as Scott's heard me say a lot, right? Sow the seeds. So in, you know, 10, 15, 35 years, the harvest is, hey, guess what? We're all human. We all bleed red. Doesn't matter your gender identity, your sexual preference, or color of your skin. None of it matters. We're all humanity, and we're going to come together, and we've got to do things like, you know, save the planet and work out how to get to Mars. And, you know, we've got bigger problems than, you know, what my neighbor's doing. So there's a lot of opportunity in this moment as well, which I think is an excellent point to highlight.
So I'm going to grab this. I'm going to grab this.
Okay, you grab away, because I was in. I was in.
No, I appreciate that, but I'm just
this was a dangerous thing. I don't know if you should have got the three.
No. Look, I'm more than happy to sit back and listen and then throw up, because for me, my whole agenda.
Did you hear that? That was really funny. That was really funny.
What he meant.
Sit here, listen, and then throw up.
Yeah, throw up, right? So, but this is the very conversation I want to have. I want to sit at the table of humanity. I want to make decisions on what's best for humanity, because I think we're at a really pivotal time in our existence, right, where we're valuing the wrong things. And Firefly Initiative, we're talking about doing good. We're talking about creating and elevating volunteer roles in our society so that we care for one another more, so we do things for one another more. We've got big corporations like Woolies, Safeway, Coles, that are just handing out crap to kids, handing out landfill consistently. What is the purpose of that, right?
Collectible landfill, I think you're
right.
right.
Yeah, collectible landfill. But what is the purpose of that, right? It's these are the conversations I want to be having. I want to understand, right? War or no war, what was the reason for the war? Let's get down to the nitty gritty and actually get a full understanding of what that is, right?
Well, and then we look at next, right?
100%. So, and then we look at humanity. What's happening next? Like, where are we going? Are we overpopulated? For me personally, yeah, I think we're at the point where we're suffocating our own planet, right? With needs, and what I personally think with that is we've just got this abundant lifestyle that it's so need more. My heart is full. My human experience is richer because I'm doing good, spending time with people, connecting with hearts, taking on, listening to people, listening to both of you right now have a conversation, right? I'm growing, I'm listening, I'm engaging myself by sitting back and just taking in. But what is the human experience really about? What is it we're really what's going to gift us the best possible human experience? We live in a world that's so complex, where specificity is ridiculous. I'll never forget, and this was a moment in time that changed me forever. I was at a party, and there was a guy that couldn't really communicate with people. I'm like, is he an accountant or an engineer? I don't know. I'll go up and have a yarn, right? So it turns out, I said, "G'day, mate. How are you?" I said, just what's going on? What do you do? He goes, "Oh, I'm an engineer." I said, Peach. I said, what do you do? He goes, "Well, actually, I do the pressure points for crash test dummies." I said, "That's cool." He goes, "Well, actually, I've got a passion project." I said, "What's that?" He goes, "Well, actually, concrete trucks. I put pressure points on the concrete trucks so that at any one time I can learn how much dry concrete's in the barrel just by the amount of pressure of the barrel puts on the wheels and on the front end." Right? Concrete trucks used to roll over a hell of a lot, but that's his passion, and it saves a fortune. But he knows the exact pressure, like the specificity to get to that, and he's got a passion for that. But who can he talk to about that? Who can he talk to that's actually going to enjoy listening to that? For me, it was like, whoa, that's funky as, because I remember seeing concrete trucks tip over all the time.
Yeah.
And it was simply because they had too much dry concrete in the barrel, right? And then the wet concrete would cling to it and they'd roll over. So as a society, we're getting so specific in all of our roles that we're able to have less conversations. And the only way that we're going to be able to even engage further and get more excited about it is to sometimes just sit back and listen. Listen to two people have a conversation about things. Ask questions. Get involved in the conversation. But I think the conversation that, for me, I want to be having, and more often, what's the best thing for humanity? What is it? Is it this consistent economic growth? Is it this consistent push for more? So specificity. Well, that's my only smart. That's my only smart word, Scotty. Outside of that, I use pretty basic English. But
let me. You got me, Scotty. All right.
Let me throw a hypothesis at you.
Please.
As functional human beings, are we any different than we were 20 years ago?
Yes.
No, we, biological, are we any different than what we were 20 years ago? We breathe, we eat, we get rid of our waste byproduct. The basic functionality of a human hasn't changed in what, 2,000 years?
I would love to agree with the biology of it. However, I think with the actual intake of what comes at us, I
Oh, I
think
didn't say whether it was good or bad. I said, but we still
no,
function the same.
I don't think we can. I think that's been the evolution. We're having to change consistently. So therefore, where we're living now is just a representation of how fast we're growing. That me personally.
So my hypothesis is maybe if we stop talking about all the complicated, because I look at it and I go, okay, so we trying to encourage a conversation. But the trouble is with a younger generation, there's 5 conversations coming at them at once. Their phone consciousness is a conversation, even though they're not having one. The other devices, the social impact of what they've said on their last post is a conversation that they're not having. So they are blasted with. So if we stopped talking, and the hypothesis is this, I'm going to say corduroy.
Go explain.
Corduroy was like the hottest, coolest thing that you could wear in the late 70s.
Have you still got some?
I do.
Grass. Okay.
Only because in the early 2020s, corduroy on the UK and New York and Paris fashion strips became the hottest thing again.
It came back.
So these cycles, these like 30-year cycles. So I go, we're all in this everything transitional period of this. And it's really funny to talk about comedians, because there's a show on that's got some of the best actors round table. Tom Hanks, Leonardo DiCaprio, Jamie Foxx, Denzel Washington, Robert De Niro, all just talking like this about stuff. And anyway, they're going through all the tragedies and all that sort of stuff that gives them their background. And Tom Hanks says, I wish I had learnt this one line 20 years ago. And they'll go, oh, what's that? And they're looking for something really profound to come out of his mouth. That goes, it too shall pass.
Yeah, I've seen that.
And you think about that and you go, okay, so this, when I go corduroy and all those trends, like we had record players when we grew up. We go through compact disc, Walkman, what do you call it, iPod, through to now. Now I don't even need any music device because my phone does it all. And guess what the kids are going out to buy? Turntables.
Vinyl.
So this whole process of going in, maybe if we reduce the conversation, because it says we reduce the conversation, we reduce the opinion. You reduce the opinion, you reduce the argument. Just throw on that hypothesis out there. So like when we are just talking for the sake of making noise, which a lot of these conversations are, and as we said, squeaky wheel, whoever makes the biggest noise gets the attention. Like I just look at it, and with no offense to the LGBTQ community, there is a major Mardi Gras pageant to celebrate their individuality, their success in the community, all those things. They come to a big celebration. Where's the volunteer Mardi Gras? Why don't we have a parade and a pageant that celebrates the 5.9 volunteers in Australia? Just saying.
I got a question to throw at you both, because this is something that it's good to celebrate one another, right? In my mind, I think it's really good to celebrate one another in our genius. It's celebrate, find our magic, and just enjoy it, right? No matter what it is. Without putting my spin on it, I'm going to ask you this question. Do you think people are so we're trying to put this without being politically correct, but trying not to screw it up completely too. So
no pressure, no pressure, Scotty. No pressure.
No. Well,
no judgment either, man. No
okay,
judgment.
so I'm going to throw my
Just
judgment
say,
in.
just say.
Yeah, okay.
Just say.
So, do you think people are so busy with projecting a need to have no label that they're too scared to be seen?
Oh, it's a good question.
Can you just repeat that? Because for some reason, my audio just crackled a bit in the middle there, so I didn't get it all.
Do you think, is that still, you got me or not?
Yeah, good.
Okay, cool. Sorry.
Yep.
All right. So, getting the wording right again. Do you think people are so busy projecting because they don't want to be seen? Lisa.
I have thoughts.
Very good.
I think we as human beings tend to be dichotomous. And what I mean by that is we tend to go, it's either this or this. And we consistently struggle in different frames, different contexts between this and this. We want to be connected, right? Internet, social media was designed to connect people. And what we have realized, it does that, right? It connects groups of, subgroups. It connects them really well. But it also then potentially disconnects people from families because they're on their phones all the time, right? So it both connects and disconnects. We as human beings are programmed deeply in our DNA, and we've spoken about this before, Scott, as tribal creatures, right? We are group-orientated creatures. We're designed to thrive in a village. Yet developmentally, we naturally go through a period, which we call teenagehood, of individualization. Or it's a period of the self within the collective, right? So we also are driven to stand out from the crowd that we also want to be accepted by, right? And so we play these dichotomous back and forth tug, push, pull games in various different parts of our lives over our different periods of our lifetime. We, at the same time, like I've been coaching now for almost 10 years, and I think every single client out of hundreds or thousands, I don't know how many clients over those years and conversations, am very aware that human beings are constantly in this dichotomous push-pull of desperately wanting to be seen and heard and simultaneously terrified of the exact same thing.
Yeah.
So are we projecting so much because we are afraid of being seen? Some of us at some points in our lives until we swing the other way, is my very long, complex answer to your question.
I think you're spot on. And I think there is the unfortunate part is that there is the 180-degree position on that somehow or other we've created this like society you know, again, when we had no social media and growing up, kids at school, you knew who liked you, who didn't like you. If the ones that didn't like you didn't bully you, you didn't worry about them. And you didn't have to impress the ones that liked you. So we now find that there's this separation and stigma attached to being individual or left out or isolated. So those individuals then look for different groups that will accommodate them, even if they have to change to fit into that group. So we actually got this culture that we're creating an opportunity for people to get further and further away from their true selves because they get into this group. They've transformed. You know, we went through that whole goth period and all that sort of stuff, and every kid was going to be a goth. You know, are you a goth?
I was in the 90s
really?
when it was cool.
Yeah, there you go, right? So was there got to be the principle of the whoever starts that movement because they have a really defined ideology or theology behind those sort of things. But then there's a lot of them that just go, oh, I did it because it was cool. Do you know what I mean? There was a lot of them that went because it subjectified them as a collective group of those that are on the edge or depressed or, you know, radical or whatever.
Do you think these things have changed over the years, or has it what's always been just been amplified and we now have access to it on an amplified level? Like growing up at high school, I did not know what the high school experience in the UK was like. I didn't know what the high school experience in the US was like. I knew what my high school experience was. But now, because we're all globally connected, we're comparing at a larger scale. But I'm not convinced that kids have changed or that the way that we relate has changed. I just think it's all happening in a larger context than it did back, you know, when I was going through it. And we're now more aware of the larger context. We you know, we had a more constrained world. Like our world was smaller.
Look, I 100%. I couldn't agree with it. Anyone that knows me, and I'll get in trouble for saying this because we're actually using the one thing that I'm going to air that has destroyed culture and society, which is the internet. I'm 100% advocate on the basis that when you look about the fabrics of things, you know, was there bad before the internet? Yes. Was it magnified after the internet? Yes. Did it become easier? Yes. Did it create content that desensitized kids now? Because here's the thing, right? And I've noticed that there's a thing that I've coined as boredom syndrome. Right? These kids are so bored instantly. And
they can't.
Some people call it attention. They're bored. When we were bored as kids, you went out the back and you started playing cricket, or you built a cubby house, or you made mud pies, or you did some random thing, or you read a book. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? So there is those. There's
no threat. There's a fast lower threshold for bored, for sure.
Yeah. But also their life is bored because they're desensitized to horror, sex, political agendas, war, everything graphic by the time they're 8 or 9 or 10 or 11 or 12. Whereas we didn't learn about those things. I grew up in television and we were made to watch the news, and we had the old ticker tape machine that international news would come in that every now and then would make it to the local news. Do you know what I mean?
Was that just after the dinosaurs?
Actually, the last one was the report on the last dinosaur.
Immediately after. No, it's cool. I'm just giving you in context here.
Do you know what I mean? But you're right. We didn't know what was going on in Ukraine. Right. So I didn't have the opportunity to be an international compassionate for their cause. I was worried about what was happening in America. Do you know what I mean? Because the tennis court was flooded this weekend and we couldn't go and play.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I think there's always two sides to this coin, though. I do think that there are individuals who have connected to communities via the internet that they previously would never have known existed, and you know, better or worse, ugly otherwise, obviously the nefarious elements of society have access to the same technology. But I think at the same time as there's groups of kids getting together to bully someone. There's also kids that now have access to collectives that they don't have access to in their geographical area, that it's helping them to be connected to. I mean, I think technology is a tool. I used to say, you know, it's a bit like a hammer, right? A hammer's just a hammer. You can either build a house with it or you can knock someone's brain in with it. It's just a hammer. It's how do you use the tool? What are you using the tool for? What's your intention with the tool? If you're going to use the internet for bad, well, sure. You know, I back in the day when I worked in Shepparton, I went to a stabbing, right? Let's joke. I went to more than one, but love you,
Hey.
Shep.
Hey, settle, back it up.
But
Never happened.
The weapon, but the weapon was a Swiss Army knife, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, a Swiss Army knife designed to be really useful, to be a very positive tool. Happened to, you know, she used it to kill the bloke, but it's not the Swiss Army knife fault, right? Nobody sued the Swiss Army for making Swiss Army knives because of how it had been used. So I think we've got to, I do appreciate that it's a different world, and technology, you know, you look at technology since the Industrial Revolution is lightning speed compared to prior to the Industrial Revolution. Like, it's insane. Mm-hmm. My grandma only died last year, and in her lifetime, she went from horse and carts to emailing her cousin in Canada, like, right, in 94 years. It's incredible. So the pace of change has definitely accelerated. Is everything that comes in that pace of change necessarily a negative? I'm not so sure. I think it's a modern day hammer.
Yeah, here's the thing does my head in, right? And it gets back to the why and what's next. And we're seeing this in this massive surge now of AI. And now they're getting to have robots who are AI programmed and are getting really scary, which will then create more boredom.
Scary's one.
No, it's scary in relation to what they are actually capable of doing. That's the scary bit, because what happens next? And again, you get those conspiracy theorists that project down the line that eventually we need no humans.
Right, so we can all live a life of leisure because there'll be AI aged care nurses because we don't have enough aged care nurses. Fantastic, right? This is what I mean. One response could be, oh, it's scary. What'll happen next? Then they're going to take over. It's the war of the machines. It's Terminator, right? Okay. Or, wow, this is really new territory. How exciting. What happens next? You know, like you can lean that in multiple different directions.
Mm-hmm. So here's go on, Scotty, you go. You've been quiet.
He's going to keep us to time because it's an hour.
No. So what does it mean to be human?
There's a question.
I like Chris's perspective. AI as a tool is amazing. I use it in my work.
So we're going to stay on this question. We're going to stay on this question. What does it mean to be human?
I think, and I'm hoping I'm right, especially in relation to, thanks Chris for the comment about it is a tool until it gets to not be a tool. I think part of being human is having the ability to say, I'm sorry. Get that one in your AI. Get a robot to tell me they're sorry.
Lisa?
It's a really complicated question.
Isn't it some?
What is it to be human? What does it mean to be human? everything that I'm coming up with in my brain, I'm like, oh, that's what it means. And I'm like, cats do that. You know, human means to love. My dog loves me. It means to feel. Well, we know that there's, you know, all other mammals and animals feel, and they feel pain and they feel emotion. Okay. So what really is it to be human? Voltaire, was it? I think, therefore I am. Right?
Yeah.
I think historically the key to humanity, or the thing that makes us different, is our ability to self-analyze. Is our thinking capacity to reflect on ourselves. I'm not sure that anything else does that. That ability, that thought process capacity for self-reflection and self-analysis. I think that is key to our humanity, and we need to keep doing it.
Yeah. It's funny because that got me to think that I think we struggle with this question, like all of us, because that's the real definition of being human. It's almost like it's a question that if you're human, you can't answer, because there's no factual layer. You know what I mean? You can't just say, well, it's just because we think. It's because we talk. It's because we have feelings and emotions and we care, and we can. I think, for me, the more I think about it, it's that if I could define what it is, then that's a definition. Like here is a factual definition. You know, if I said, what does it like to be human? It's to be a muscular, skin-cased organism on a skeletal structure with a nervous system. You know what I mean? That's the factual definition
a bipedal,
of a human. Yeah. An upright, walking, transient. You know, blah blah blah. But the body is not what makes us human. What do you think, Scotty? So you do all this, you dig these questions in and then just sit there, right?
Yeah,
so now we're putting it on
what do you reckon? Yeah, go on.
What do you reckon?
I think it's an experience. I don't think there's a right and wrong. I think it's an experience that we'll grow through.
So you've taken the being human. It's about being human.
Yeah.
So maybe human is a verb, not a noun, right? To
Possibly.
human.
I like
to
think
be in
so.
a skeletal, muscular system that walks upright and thinks and talks.
I don't know. I've seen dog videos on TikTok that they do that, Darryl.
So, and it's this for me. It's human being, right? And my concern with, and it's only concern and it's open for debate, as we're clear here, with the advent of AI and the more we head down robotic path, and are we really going to be humans being, or just human? I want to be a human being. I want to be a part of things. I want to do things. I want to experience things. Me.
I think that's maybe why AI doesn't freak me out, because of that. Because I think that the things that we are programming AI to do, the things that the avenues that we see it being useful as a humanity, are actually in the human doing, not in the human being. And so we can't actually replace ourselves in the human being. What we're outsourcing is the human doing, right? Because many of us have become human doings that are task focused, and it's about productivity, and it's about efficiency, and it's actually not living that full human experience life, right? And so if we can potentially outsource some of that human doing, I'm all up for it if it allows more space and time for me to be a human being, then I'm not adverse to outsourcing some of the human doing.
One of the greatest things I've experienced is to spend time with people that don't want to be here and to listen to their reasons. And I make decisions in my life based upon those experiences. And this is my personal opinion, we are way too involved in creating this extraordinary future that we miss the now. We miss the moments that make us human, that gift us the experience that is. Sometimes that's just sitting, listening. Sometimes that's just taking the time to walk your neighbor across the road. Sometimes it's sitting with somebody who's just really struggling, and just to be. You know, like there's an experience that I'm grateful for my experience in life, but there's one with my mum that really, really challenged me to what the human experience was. Because my mum, she's always gotten around in moon boots and struggled to get around. She's diabetic, and she was working in the city. And she's get the train every day. Here's an older woman. She was 50, getting herself to and from work, and quite often people wouldn't give her a seat on the train. But this one day, she's walking into work and she fell over. People walked over her. It was 3 less desirable people. They came and picked her up and helped her. What does it really mean to be human? Race into work, push, 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 push. Or to pick a woman up because she's fallen over. What is the experience that we're having? What do we want to create? Let's just do good.
Yeah, man.
Yeah. Let's just do good.
Good is a good thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That's it, right? It's the connection, as somebody wrote in the comments, right? It's connection. It's being present. So if AI and stuff and technology and all that can help the booking process for a counsellor, great. But AI is not going to be the counsellor. A person's going to be the counsellor, right? We can't replace the empathy that human beings feel. We need human beings for the humanness, right? For the empathy, for the compassion, for the being present, for the connection, for the EMF resonance that our heart actually emits that connects to another heart, right? Like the science of it, right? We all, as human beings, emit an EMF frequency from a vibration, energetic frequency from our heart. That's irreplaceable, right?
So why are we trying? Why are we pushing? Why are we pushing so hard to create these robotic opportunities to represent a human, when that's the very experience that we're meant to be having? Why are we trying? Why aren't we spending our time actually connecting with one another and taking the time to actually learn and understand and love one another? Why aren't we doing good?
But we
doing
are.
good fills your heart.
But we are, and people
I
are.
I question that. Some people are. I question that. I question the values of being human. I question the values of where we want to head. There's money for me is an extraordinary one because it's meant to be a fair exchange of services. Right? That's what it's there for, to have a fair exchange of services. Yet that's been brutalized. That's what Firefly Initiative is about. That's what the Business of Smiles is about. It's not about money. It's how we connect, how we touch hearts, how we do that. I hate the fact that I need money. I hate it because it doesn't fill my heart, but I need it to do other things.
Mm.
Well, when's it going to be in a fair exchange again?
Oh, that is a whole other conversation.
Yeah, but then we'll leave it at that.
When you get the keys to reciprocity, mate.
That's what we're building, yeah. That's what we're building by having these conversations, you know. Like, and that's for me. I'm going to become a little bit more bold in the conversations that I have because I've been nice, you know, and I'm not going to be as conservative as I was because I actually give a shit about where we're going. I care about what it is to be human. I care what it is about connecting hearts to hearts. Right now, I'm sitting here with two people that live in my heart. Yeah. Because I've taken the time to spend time, do the little things.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, we know. Because it's the same. But you know what? I think, what did you say about your conversation is going to be more brave or more?
My conversation is going to be more brave. I'm not going to be as conservative.
Bold.
Yeah,
conservative. You know, because, and we shared a couple of weeks ago, you know, that day that I woke up somewhere between 50 and now and went, feel a bit wiser today. That was a whole transitional thing, right? But now I get to that point, like I said, I can see 60 just around the next bend, not light years away. I've now qualified into that. I'm an old guy, and I don't care what you think. And it's so refreshing to go, whether you like me, whether you don't care. Whether you agree with me, whether you don't care. You ask me a question, here's my answer, or I need to ask you a question. Do you know what I mean? It's that point to just go. Yeah.
Or you can emblazon it on your jumper. Right?
You can, right? Yeah.
But
that's the revelation in life when you get to that point. You know, and I go back to the younger generation. We talk about social media and the implant. They are so concerned about what they say and who's going to like it and who's not. Do you know what I mean? It becomes all consuming.
Yeah.
And we get away from.
It's a quick way to lose yourself. Like you said before, you know, they're distancing from their truest self, trying to be, you know, very mindful and politically correct and, you know, this, that, and the other. And I want to make sure I'm not offending anyone. That actually now I don't even remember what I was saying.
Oh, but they're taking away they're taking away the ability to grow. Okay. Yeah. Like we need to be able to make mistakes. We need to be able to be incorrect so that we can move towards creating a positive opportunity from it rather than being, I'm not going to deal with that. Right. We need to take responsibility for the conversation that comes up and just engage in it. You know, like, and I love that. I love that opportunity.
There is this came up earlier today. I was having a conversation with my parents that we're visiting, and there is a Maori saying, which I will not attempt in Maori, but it is, the translation is, the food of chiefs is discussion or dialogue, communication. The food of chiefs, right? Or the food of leaders is discussion, dialogue, communication, right? And I love that because that having the conversation is key. You can be offended in the conversation. You can be uncomfortable in the conversation. You can disagree in the conversation. You can agree in the conversation. You can be flattered in the conversation, but have the conversation, have the dialogue, right? Because that's where, you know, collaborations are formed. That's where common ground is found. That's where boundaries are found, right? And all of it remains a mystery until you have the dialogue, right? And I love that. And it's funny. I always laugh when the universe, you know, sends me things like 2 or 3 times in a row. Things will pop up. I'll be like, that again. I think coming back to what you said, having the conversation is really key.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that's the one thing that we need to learn. We need to learn how to do that, because I don't want to take out too much more time, because I want to. We're not going to keep it short, but this
That ship has sailed.
This whole conversation, right, is literally about growth, right? It's about sitting, listening, playing, grabbing things that people give to us to dance with, because that's where we get to the true essence of being human. So I'm gonna say to you both, thank you very much for a very engaging conversation. And I do believe this is doing good. I do feel, however, we're going to, as of this will be, I don't know, I'll have a chat with Daryl, and whether or not doing good morphs into a bigger conversation. I like the fact that doing good is I'd like to share more doing good. I actually want doing good stories. If you've enjoyed this and you've engaged and you've got a doing good story, share it with us. Let us know, and we want to share it here and talk about why it's doing good and open that up and understand what it means in reciprocity, when that doing good is part of what we do.
Yeah. Amen.
Yeah. So on that note, Daryl,
yes,
just 1 minute, wrap up what you feel today was brought to you.
Two things. One, it invigorates the fact that you aren't isolated in these thoughts, that we've all shared differences and commonalities in our view, which is great. But the other thing you mentioned just then, Scotty, about doing good, and whether we have a bigger platform than this or whether we don't, I think we need to start educating our kids to the confidence of doing good for you. Like, this does good for me, which means tomorrow, because I've had this experience with you again, I get to be recharged to do more good, or to try and do good. So I encourage, the young, if we need to get them into a place where it's safe to feel that this is a good thing for me to do, which then resonates into being able to do good for somebody else. There's so much about the value of let's do good for others. And our program is all about give first and get later, right? Whereas this culture is about get first and give later. Well, I go, if you're giving yourself a good experience that helps you then radiate that experience because you feel good about it, then do it. And we've got to embrace that, because that will start, hopefully, our next generation that then, like I said to you, we had this young kid that didn't want to go and do his hour at the old person's home because he wants to talk to them. Under sufferance, goes 2 weeks, 3 weeks, fourth week, comes home and he goes, I'm mad. I think his name was Ernie, who was ex-NASA. Like, I met an astronaut. The kid can't wait to get back and see Ernie next week because of the stories they exchanged. So, like, we have hope. And without, sorry, my minute went a bit longer, Scotty, but, like being at Melbourne at the Rotary International Conference and mingling and meeting 13,000 international volunteers that all volunteered to come here, that all paid their way to get here, just so they could share with the experience of all the other Rotarians about the good that these guys are doing on the planet. So we are now, from our perspective, quasi put on Scotty's rose-colored glasses, because I am fortunate to just be meeting good people every day, which is just amazing. It's, and they say, you are who you associate with, and you are. If you can't be a bad person mixing with all those good people all day, because they spot you like a mile away. So yeah, we're really blessed, and we're blessed to have opportunity, like to be able to meet this guy, fall in love with what he does and his heart, and then obviously to start to connect to other people like you, Lisa. It's epic, and we grow the tribe, and we'll move the tribe to reciprocity where the food of leaders will be conversation, without doubt.
I like the thought of that. Lisa, wrap it up in a minute.
In a real minute, not a bloke minute.
So my oh God, Chris has said that my minutes are measured on Mercury, aren't they, Scott? So in the Jewish tradition, which is my background, a good deed is referred to as a mitzvah, as in like a bar mitzvah or bat mitzvah you might have heard of, right?
Mhm.
So, but a mitzvah means a good deed. And there are 3 levels of mitzvot. The first level of good deed is where you do something good for someone that you know and that they know that you did that good deed, right? So if I bring someone a casserole to their door and I'm like, here, I heard you could do with it, right? And they know that it was me that made the casserole. That's level 1. Level 2 is if I anonymously drop off a casserole at their front door. So it's a good deed. I know who I did it for, but they don't know that it was me, right? And the level 3 good deed, the sort of highest level of mitzvah you can do, is 2 ways anonymous, where you do something good for someone that you don't know who the good deed is going to, and you receive nothing in return. You get no credit, you get no nothing, right? So imagine if you gave to charity, but it wasn't tax deductible, right? Like you get nothing back, and you just do it because it's the right thing to do, right? Those are the 3 levels of good deeds. My perspective is, I don't really care what level you're doing. A good deed's a good deed, right?
Yeah,
and even if
come on.
you get a pat on the back, even if you get a tax deduction for your $2 donation, it counts. It all counts.
Hmm.
Do the good
Yeah,
deed.
yeah. It's never the wrong time to do the right thing.
And there's no wrong motivation for the right thing, right? I hear people say, oh, he's doing that, but that's because he's getting this in return. I don't care. He's still doing the good thing, right? If you're doing it to get something back, do it to get something back. They're still doing the good thing. It still counts, right? I think it's easy to judgment. Yes, what would the Torah say? That's right. It's easy for us to apply our judgment even on something like good deeds. I've had somebody say, oh, he does the good things, but he does it for the wrong reasons. I'm like, oh, hang on a minute. What are the wrong reasons? Wrong reasons according to you, that's a whole map of the world conversation. And that is mimicked across cultures, right? In Ireland, we say good deed comes back 1,000 times. In pagan traditions, if you whatever you put out, right, you give to someone else, you receive back threefold, 3 fingers pointing at you, right? So this what do you guys say? Reciprocity?
Reciprocity.
Right. So it's
the place of reciprocity.
Love it. Right. So what goes around comes around. Do a good thing because it's a good thing.
Yeah.
Not a minute.
No, it's not. So I'll keep it short and sharp. I just want to thank everyone for doing their best right now. Yeah. Let's all aim towards reciprocity.
Amen.
On that note, I've got to find a button. Thank you, Lisa. Thank you, Daryl, for a very engaging conversation.
Yeah,
and look, who knows where it's going to go from here, because I feel like it's just going to improve, because the more conversation we have, the more we can grow, the more opportunities we can create. So from my heart to yours, have an amazing night, and we'll see you next week.
Make sure you keep smiling, Scotty.
I hope you keep smiling.
I hope you're smiling too.
So
here we go. On 3.
No, I can't find it. I've got to have it here somewhere. I'm just like, I don't know where it is. Hang on, wait. Oh,
Thank you,
there
both.
it is.